Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism, midweek's election special, coming to you from downtown Poland. I'm in a place called Szczecin in Poland. I'm sorry, we're a wee bit late going out tonight, but that's due to a few gremlins and a lot of chat going on. So I'm sorry we're a wee bit late, but I hope that won't ruin your pleasure. Lots to talk about. Without further ado, I'll move on because on our weekend show, we alluded to the fact that Peter Murrell was, his jacket was in the Sugarly Peg, as they say. And of course, it wasn't until after we'd finished recording the show that word came through. So we're going to cover that. We'll start with it. We'll start there and we'll move on. And to do that, I'm joined by my three compadres, of course. They're North Dakota, our Phil, our Eva, hopefully our Yvonne just now, who's been having a couple of problems. Hopefully they're over. And have we got you, Yvonne? Oh, the camera's not there yet. Are you out both the studios?
Well, I can hear you, but I can't.
But have you closed down the other link? Maybe you're still in there. That's the problem. And of course, we're also joined by Lloyd Quinan tonight.
Hi there, everyone.
Hi, Lloyd. Welcome you all. So, sort of a quick introduction here because we're behind time, and I know that our viewers will be sitting with bated breath. And as I alluded to at the start, when we recorded just the weekend, we knew we suspected that Mr. Murrell was going to go. But it wasn't until after we had finished that he did. Was he jumped or was he pushed, Lloyd? What do you think?
Oh, I think he did. I think it's obvious that, he jumped, but he was just before he got pushed. What strikes me, or what surprised me, was he managed to hang on for so long. But I think that, the unfolding events afterwards showed us that the succession plan hadn't been made.
Yeah, and he didn't do it very graciously. One of the things he said, Phil, as he left, he was so proud of his achievements and that we were closer to independence than ever. Can you explain that to me? Because that's not how I view it.
Yeah, it's a very easy explanation. He's married to one of the biggest liars in Scotland, and therefore he's learnt very well from it. And they've both been lying, and they've both been stitching us up. And it's just the charade continues. The guy lives like his wife. I wonder how long that'll last. And I feel sad to say that, but this is a hellish time for these. These are human beings that we used to have a lot of faith in. We came to the realization that they were lying to us and they were stitching us up and they were patsies for the state and they were actually betraying the people of Scotland. So hell mend them. But you can still have a wee bit of compassion for the pain and suffering that anyone goes through. But I tell you what, it's been a long time coming, and it's due these two people who have betrayed the people of Scotland.
What legacy does he leave behind, Eva?
I think that he will be remembered as someone who was probably overpromoted and underqualified, and what he's left behind is a bad taste. He probably should have not been in the job as soon as his wife became the leader and the First Minister. And it's quite strange now that quite a lot of people in the SNP, including within the higher echelons of the party, are saying that quite openly when they didn't say it before now. And that's unfortunate. I agree with Phil in the context of having a degree of sympathy for people who are human and who are clearly suffering. It's just unfortunate that Mr. Murrell and his wife didn't appear to have the same amount of sympathy for those people who have been struggling over the course of the last 8 years when they thought that we were heading towards independence. So the legacy that's left by Mr. Murrell and by his wife is one where, at best, the support for independence has flatlined, if not slightly decreased, over their period in office. And that's a great shame, as is the fact that the leadership election continues to be a bit of a debacle. It's not good for Scotland. And I think in the fullness of time, history will not be particularly kind to Peter Orty's wife. I don't expect them to be airbrushed out of the history of the SNP as they attempted to do with others, including Alex Salmond. But I do expect that over a period of time, there will be a degree of recriminations, quite apart from what might happen in other areas of public life. So it's a very sad time, and I think it's really unfortunate that those people who have been tendering resignations have not been honest in what they've said. They've not been forthright in the reasons for their resignations in the main, and others who have lauded their contributions have either been downright sycophantic or dishonest in their assessment of the legacies that a number of individuals leave behind. And I count within that not only people who were employed by the SNP, but certain special advisors in the employ of the civil service or the Scottish Government. And I hope that time eventually will tell and the truth will out.
Lloyd, you must remember, you're a long time server in the party. I remember vividly after the surge came after the referendum. For headquarters at that time, we had 4 or 5 people in there dealing with 25,000 people, and suddenly overnight it was absolutely chaotic. And it's like, if I give it the footballing analogy, if you're in the first division, you're coming into the Premiership, you don't bring the same players, and a lot of times the same manager doesn't last very long either. You need to upscale, and the headquarters didn't do that.
No, I think the prevailing mindset was, oh, good, we've got lots and lots of money now. And all we've seen is the bureaucracy of the party developing, extending, creating its own network, and not serving the party. And I think that was because instead of having to be very, very careful with budgets, suddenly they were in a situation where there was money available and money to spend. Then that followed up by the massive amount of short money that came in from Westminster with the 56, meant that the bureaucracy could get even more bloated and even more enormous. And in some ways, that's what's led to the lack of democracy and this whole approach of you work for us coming from headquarters towards the membership. And it's because it's like any structure that starts off as a small group of people aiming for a particular aim. If you get bureaucrats caught up in that, immediately the budget expands, the bureaucrats will find somewhere to spend it that's not on your aim. That's just a fact. It happened in the Labour Party. It's happened in every organisation, every trade union as well. That's what happens if you let bureaucrats and not patriots run your organisation. And I can give you chapter and verse about how exactly the same thing has happened to our equivalent parties right across, not just Europe, but right across the world.
Absolutely. I remember when you went to conference, Phil, you had, was it the Scottish Independent? There'd be someone selling badges. And then one year we went and suddenly it was wall to wall. There was the government of Gibraltar. There was also, and it was suddenly it gone from, do you want a stall? Make a wee donation at the end of the stall's yours, to, it was like $2,000 for a stall. It just exploded. And you, as I say, and Peter, like so many, I think was promoted out over his ability.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When you see how it unfolds from the inside, and what we saw down at Westminster when the 56 went down, you could see how things were aligned. You could see those who were part of the inner working, and there was an understanding, and not an unreasonable amount of give was given. Even though I'm very used to business, very used to running teams, very used to managing people and projects and issues, we all went into politics, and some of these people like Philippa Whitford, Joanna Cherry, there's a huge list of people who were very successful and made more money outside of politics, who actually bit the bullet. And we went down there, and I went, well, this isn't my game. I've been an amateur at a junior level as an organizer in the wild frontier. What do I know about politics? And I've very quickly realised this is just a schoolyard. It's the same tactics. It's bullying. It's wee gangs, and it's cabals, and it's black arts, And politics, for just read Machiavelli's the Prince, if you want to understand how things operate, and contrast that, if you will, with the Rights of Man or some by Thomas Paine, you know, and how the ideological way that life ought to be lived. Life is not like that. Realpolitik, it takes quite a bit getting used to, but very quickly I cottoned on to the idea that I'm on my own here. Not only am I on my own, these wee groups of people are not my friends. And it makes it difficult when you go down with an idea that we're supposed to be fighting for independence, and then these wee groups of people come in, take greater and greater control. Suddenly their friends are promoted, and they're individuals who are loyal to their outlook, their philosophies, and keeping the gravy train on the tracks that they want it to be on.
Mhm.
And that's the worry. That's what's happened here. It's exactly what Lloyd described. And I saw it firsthand unfolding. And there was a large group of us, a substantially large group of us that has now considerably grown from the 56 who were quite completely disenfranchised and were ignored. You know, you've got people with phenomenal skill sets. I mean, look at the disasters that the SNP, the decisions they've made, the debacle they've made of so many issues since Alex handed over, since Nicola's taken control, and these children have been put in place that won't rock the boat. Yeah, that's why Peter's there. He won't rock the boat, and Nicola's an arrogant, very selfish, and stupid. For all her intelligence, she's a stupid person.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know that the day that she took over, and I think she was advised that the first task she should do was to be bringing a new CEO. And so it proved, and it was wrong. It was a bad one. But when he went because he was actually he was assassinated by Murray Foote. Let's be honest. Murray Foote made it abundantly clear that he was taking the fall for the lies about the membership numbers, Yvonne. But it was obvious that it came from Peter, and he was left with nowhere to go. But here's the thing I want to ask you, Yvonne. Since this has all started, when the numbers, and we'll come on to it in greater depth, but what we've been told and we're supposed to believe is that Peter didn't really know the numbers. He wasn't sure how many members there was and how members were lost. We've been told to believe. We've been told that the party leader didn't know how many members there were or how many had been lost. We're told that the deputy leader didn't know. We're told that the leader at Westminster didn't know, nor did his predecessor, Ian Blackford. Nobody knew the numbers, and the party president didn't know the numbers. Now, tell me, how credible or believable is that?
Well, they're just treating everyone like fools, and the contempt with which we're all being treated. And it continues. 2 days ago, there was an SNP advert running on Twitter congratulating and welcoming 5,000 new members.
Yeah.
And I just thought, is that some oik in head office having a bit of fun and riling people up? Or is it genuine? The trouble is, once you lie and you've been caught out, you are not believed again. And people talk about Boris Johnson, but the SNP, the whole party has been damaged by these lies. Boris Johnson is his own person. He's his own liar. Nobody believes a word he says. But he didn't destroy the credibility of the Tories. You
need another word. We need another word.
It's not a great example. But the thing is, the SNP, you don't know who's lying. Blind patriotism, people lying just to protect the party. Blind stupidity, people lying because they're too stupid to see that they're being lied to. And quite frankly, when they said that the membership was now in the 70s thousands, I'm thinking, well, actually, is it? For all we know, it could be down to 25,000, which was a rumour that came on Prism just a few weeks ago that before the membership was even being discussed or became headline news, there was talk that it had gone down to 25,000. I don't know. We'll never know. We can't trust them. The trust is gone. And for Chief Mammy to rock up on Loose Women was just unbelievable. I mean, where are we going to see her next? I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here, or the Big Brother house. You know, it's just unbelievable. She's and what was her first concern when she got onto Loose Women? It was that she wore the same jacket on the show as she'd worn when she made her resignation speech. It's all about her. Me, 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 me. Well, no shame, no humility. People have been left broken and distraught in the SNP, people who've invested their whole lives emotionally in the SNP. Bits of kids that we heard about before who were on high wages with very little life experience behind them, or you know, their whole livelihoods are relying on, and she is, all she's concerned about is, oh, I've worn the same red jacket. You know, get over yourself, Nicola, and get lost until you show some humility, really.
Yeah, Lloyd,
Roddy, could
you say something there?
Yeah, I'm watching social media, and I think we can fall into this trap too. She's over. She's finished. He's over. They're finished. By next Monday, there will be a new leader of the Scottish National Party. What happens in this coming week, or not indeed, but what happens in this coming week, we cannot afford to spend time, which effectively on the legacy. This is all going to come out, and it will come out in the correct forum where action can be taken against these very people. What we need now is positive ideas to lead us through these coming days. Forget the legacy. We know what the legacy is. It's empty. It's empty. There is no legacy. The legacy is a failure.
You're absolutely right.
And we have to
moving on to it. Yeah, because the point I was trying to get to and was coming to was that it was the numbers that saw off Peter. And it was this set alarm bells off for our candidates. And that was, we don't know how many members there are. We don't know who our electorate are. There's words of 78,000, 54, 71. And so the candidates were rather unhappy, and rightly so. And they also weren't allowed to contact the members. As you would in any election be allowed. You're allowed to say you one free address, of course, in a general election, a free address to every house in the country. But our candidates were not allowed. And so they went to headquarters, and we've got to say that we've got a continuity CEO now calling in Mike Russell. And he was approached, and two things came out last night. I don't know if you all saw it. Michelle Thompson, a person I've got the utmost respect and trust for and believe 100%. Did you, Phil? And she said there was a meeting arranged, or she was told there was a meeting arranged because the candidates were expressing concerns about the validity and credibility of the election. And it was cancelled by Michael at the last minute. Although they were still
it was cancelled by Lorna Finn, Roddy.
Yeah, the secretary.
Yeah. It
was cancelled. So their concerns weren't heard. We know that there was a very reasonable proposal put in by Ash Reagan. That, you know, with all this stuff that's come out, people might not have voted the same way. Would you say that's a fair shout?
I don't think there's any question about that, but I mean, I think we need to be honest about this. Michael Russell was brought in to get the fix fixed. You know, I find it astonishing that Michael Russell is good, and I've known Mike for a very, very long time. I am astonished at how this man is constantly described as elder statesman, senior figure, and never, ever any of the scandals that occurred with Mike between 1999 and 2003 are never referenced. But for anybody else who did the same, are constantly referenced. I've never trusted Mike Russell since the day I clapped eyes on him, and I still don't. And I say this, Michael Russell in this job will lie to anybody and everybody simply to achieve the aim that he has. And I would suggest that aim was to make Humza the leader. And I think it's moving now to being make Kate the leader. Now, I may well be wrong, but I don't think so.
Phil, he's been caught right out on he turned around and said, well, that one of the things that Ash suggested was that people could change their votes, that there was a facility in place with MI Voice that would enable people to change their vote, and there was a precedent. This had happened before, and it could be done. And Mike said, oh, no, it can't be done. And our cyber security experts have told us don't do it. Do I need to remind everyone who the cyber security people are in this election? GCHQ. You're damn right they don't want a pro-independence person maybe to win it.
Yeah, for anyone doubting Mike's credentials, and he did come over well. He's a good speaker. He's a clever man. He's capable in many functions. But I'm 100% with Lloyd on this one. Absolutely. And anyone in any doubt, look at his actions latterly. And 2 and 2 does make 4. On the first point of no one knew the numbers, well, I disagree. Some senior people obviously did. They just lied about them. There's a concept in mathematics called imaginary numbers. And Wikimedia describes an imaginary number as a real number multiplied by the imaginary unit. And by definition, 0 is considered to both real and imaginary. And there's another phrase for it, another meaning for it, a second meaning, 17th century, René Descartes, he used imaginary numbers as a derogatory term, and it was regarded as fictitious or useless. But here we can add another definition to Wikipedia. A number of figures conjured by various management leaders within the SNP to falsely reflect the membership's numbers during the reign of Nicola the Liar. And we're well ready, all of these shysters. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. That's for what Ash is suggesting. Common sense. The concerns of the legitimate candidates in an election that has been clearly a bum's rush through are not just reasonable. There's a duty of care that those who are administering this election and those that represent the people and the members are seen not just that they are fair, but they're seen to be fair and unbiased, and that cannot be said. It cannot be said. I mean, it's a reasonable approach, and the SNP in this deliberate shambles and stitch-up of an election has no integrity, has no credibility, and should be rerun. Not least of which because the goalposts have moved at a critical time. We now see SNP management who back Humza or potentially Kay as the lesser of two evils, lying through their teeth after many have voted, but some are not yet to do so, and the campaign and the voting is not complete. Imagine the vote in 2014 if Brexit had broken during the end of the vote. What a difference that would make, and what a difference this fact would make to the outturn of this election if the people were told the truth for once. SNP, someone in there, stand up and tell the truth.
Eva, what Ash came out and told us this, I think it was a reasonable request. Allow people to be able to change their vote. Allow them to send out a one flyer to all members. Everyone should do it to get the equality with what had happened on behalf of Humza. But it didn't even get to NEC to be decided. So we don't know who to, Michael and who else, GCHQ and Laura Flynn, Ian McCann, did they take the decision? It didn't get to that. But here's the thing, Eva. This isn't just about a leader of the SNP. Everyone in Scotland's got to be satisfied that this is a just, honest, democratic, fair election. And there is no way we can say that, is there?
No. I think you've hit the nail on the head again, Roddy. I understand that earlier tonight, Angus Brendan McNeil confirmed that he had communications with My Voice, which clarify that it's perfectly feasible for somebody to edit or change their vote, and it can be done safely without any issues in relation to hacking or inaccuracies or fiddling or the like. But apparently my voice are quoted as saying that they've been given very firm instructions, which can only have come from the SNP, presumably from Mike Russell, to the effect that no editing is to be allowed. Now, if no editing is to be allowed, then the members of the party have concerns, supporters of the party have concerns, former members of the party have concerns, because they will feel that the reasons why they left the party and do not currently support it are not being considered, and that all has an impact on the credibility of the party and hence the credibility and the integrity of the candidate to be First Minister. Mm-hmm. And Scotland cannot afford any lack of integrity or suspicion or suggestion of irregularity at the helm of a government when we are supposed to be driving towards freedom for our country. So if the new leader wants to have credibility and wants to have the support of the Yes movement, that new leader, as nominated First Minister, has to have the ability to say, hand on heart, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, that the process has been transparent, there has been no fiddle, no muddle, no guddle, there has been nothing but downright, complete and utter, proper, due process. In the absence of that, an independence campaign will be tainted. And the word tainted has been attached to the Sturgeon government for far too long. It does not need to be attached to her successor. Scotland deserves better, and the independence movement deserves better as of today.
Yep, there's two things, Lloyd, in this that we've got to remember. The circumstances changed dramatically. The guy who was overseeing the election, which was already doubts, but was sacked for dishonesty.
Yeah.
The guy that's replaced him, Mike Russell, has come in and said, yes, the place is the SNP is in a terrible mess. He used that phrase.
Yeah.
It's in a terrible mess, but the election's fine. Everything's fine there. Everything's hunky-dory. Those two statements are contradictory, Lloyd.
This is the man who is described as a man with a great political nose, a man who understands political strategy. Which political strategist ever would think that it's a good idea to elect a new First Minister of this country who's going to spend the next 3, 4, 5 months answering the question, do you believe you were legitimately elected? That, you know, come hell or high water, that is exactly what's going to happen, whether we like it or we don't like it. Because remember, those in the mainstream media, their boss has just left the stage. They owe nothing to whoever comes in, you know? So that's the attack line. I mean, it's already been chatted about, you know, between themselves. They're already talking about it. They know how they're going to fill their papers without an awful lot of effort for the next few months because of the actions of one man. A man described in the newspapers and indeed by other members of the SNP as a senior statesman, important figure. This man is incapable of telling the truth in my eyes. This man is incapable of making a political judgment that is for the benefit of the people of Scotland. He makes political judgments which are to the benefit of Michael Russell and in the past to the leadership of the Scottish National Party. I've yet to see him decide on any particular policy or strategy that was to the benefit of the vast majority of the people of my country.
Yvonne, there's a lot of people who say, well, the reason they won't stop and pause and, you know, bring in a third party, audit the numbers so we know who's exactly how many numbers and voters, because we've seen things. In fact, I'm going to come to Eva in a minute, as a member of the family who left the SNP who got a vote. And, you know, it wouldn't just be Eva's house that's got a vote that shouldn't have a vote. But the rush here is two things, or two or three, in my humble, cynical opinion. Tell me what you think. One, they want to make sure they don't miss the time for opposing the Section 35, because that window's closing. And if they don't have a new leader in place by next Monday, they could lose the ability to go after the Section 35. And also, the continuity candidate, their favourite, the longer he's exposed to the public, the less likely he is to win the election. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say I'm being cynical or accurate?
I think you're being accurate. The trouble is now the party has lost all credibility, and nobody will believe any promises that are coming out of the mouths of some of the leadership. I would say, and maybe I'm being naive now, I would trust Ash Reagan to speak the truth, and also Kate Forbes. Sadly, Humza is totally tainted by the lies, and for him to insist that he is going to go ahead with this ridiculous litigation, which can't possibly be won, is ridiculous. It's, they're treating taxpayers' money as though it's their own money tree and just throwing it around. We've got this ridiculous situation of the ferries. There's about the overspending there is obscene. We've got a looming scandal coming up with the steel plants and the smelting plant. I can't quite get my head around it at the moment, but there's some very dark shenanigans that have gone on. And I think that we've just got the tip of the iceberg at the moment. I think the full treachery and duplicity of what Sturgeon's people have been up to will come tumbling out. And actually, I said I trusted Kate Forbes, but she is the finance minister, and so she'll have thrown quite a bit of money here and there on different projects. So, if you're watching, Kate, and I know that you do watch Prism, maybe now is the time to come clean and let it all come tumbling out. But there's some very dark things that are happening. And when you've got a regime, and that's what they are now, a regime that makes Boris Johnson look like a choir boy, things are seriously amiss, and the people of Scotland deserve much better than this. I'm really heartbroken because I invested so much time and energy to move to Scotland to be part of this great movement. And I'm really concerned now. These bastards, and that's all I can call them, have thrown independence down the plug hole. And I am shattered by it.
There is, Phil, certain people, and one of these, Sue Campbell, has put out feelers and got back. Last I looked, it was 1,500. I'm one of them who have offered to throw in some money to do a court case. I'll be a member. I'll have to be a member of the SNP that goes forward. It cannot be a candidate. I don't believe you're shaking your head there, but I've been told it cannot be a candidate, or it shouldn't. No, come back to that. Not the candidate, but he who wields the knife never wears the crown. Yeah. So it is better coming from a member, and a member goes to court. I mean, that is so damaging. If that is the public are forced the hand of the SNP, when the standing CEO could have looked at least at meeting Ash halfway and Kate halfway with doing some things.
It's just another measure of the rot, and I will certainly be checking out Wings Over Scotland and be contributing my tuppence worth or 20 quid or whatever it is to this, because these spots need outed. This corruption needs to be exposed, and this betrayal. There's a price for this betrayal, and the gloating of the British establishment sickens me. But we've got to accept it, because what sickens me most is Nicola and her cabal's betrayal of the people of Scotland. She will be seen by all who choose to look for the quisling she is. She sold out the people rather than face up to the issues. She was being blackmailed by the establishment over, and that she has the arrogant naivety to believe that they would not turn on her if she followed their instructions and backed away from any serious or tangible effort to deliver independence from the UK for Scotland. But critically, and it's something that Lloyd touched on earlier, where do we go from here? Nicola's gone, as he says, and some of these people are gone, but the apparatus is still in place. As I've said many times, this clear out is really just beginning. Now, having served her purpose for almost a decade of her reign, and with the split and semi-decimation of the once proud and forthright and disciplined and unified SNP, the greater Yes movement, and with our own people baying for a resignation, as we have sadly had to join the ranks of those who bay for Nicola's head. The establishment can put the boot in while the SNP is down, and they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Nicola thought she was going to get protected. She's not. You know, and they did this. They're going to put their boot into the SNP now that the SNP is on its knees, in the hope, indeed expectation, of setting back the independence cause for another decade. So the Unionist fifth columnists, MI5 establishment apparatchiks can sleek it their way back to their assorted velveteen layers. And the price of this betrayal, everything she's done has been to the detriment of Indy and to the benefit of her masters, the British globalist establishment. I'm hoping they've abandoned her as she deserves. Certainly the protection she enjoyed for so long is for the most part gone. But as long as she suffers, hopefully more than the suffering she has failed to lift from the people of Scotland, and indeed she has prolonged that suffering and has exacerbated it. Just look at what happened with the National Energy Company, the ScotWind project. Everything hums a touch. The attainment gap, poverty, education bills, school sex survey, GRR, ferries. It just goes on. And contrast this to Alex Salmond, who handed over to Nicola, I think, 4 major infrastructure projects that were ongoing. What's Nicola handing over? Decimation.
She said I've got it written down. She said she's handed over a strong foundation, a brilliant foundation for her successor.
Another lie. A lie. Just to finish, read Carlton Jock's article, "The Betrayal of the Working Class of Scotland: The Real Crime Perpetuated by the SNP Leadership." And I'll just quote him. There's a quote at the very end of it. "In the end, the votes, money, activism, and support for the SNP, drawn primarily from Scotland's working class, has been funneled directly into sustaining the architecture of the Scottish establishment. That is the real crime the SNP leadership perpetuated against the people of Scotland."
It is, Phil's alluded to it. She's gone. Peter's gone. I mean, there's a whole lot of the top echelon have gone, but there's still a lot remaining of the cabal, Eva. And it seems to me that they're in denial and in defensive mode, because at the moment it's all down to Alex Salmond and the Alba party have caused all this. They fiddled the numbers. They had the 633 grand. We did, Alba did everything. But this didn't, to list, and the other one is, and it was the numbers because of COVID, this, that, and the next thing. The absolute denial. They've got to come out of denial. They've got to face up to the reality, as Lloyd has alluded to. If this election goes ahead as is, the next leader, whoever it is on a hiding to nothing. The party's on a hiding to nothing. The next election will be slaughtered. Take a bit of pain now. Take a wee bit of pain and then get the gain again.
As you know, I'm a lawyer. When I go to court and I ask the sheriff to do something, I have to be specific about what I want him to do, why I want him to do it, where the legal framework justifies my position, and I have to be very, very careful that what I say is what I want, and that there is a process whereby the sheriff can understand where I'm coming from and where I want to take my client to. What I cannot do is to stand there and waffle or, have my mouth hanging open full of slavers. And I think that over the course of the last few years, there's been a lot of slavering coming out at Bute House and the Scottish Government. And that's not because Scotland is either too wee or too poor or populated by people who are too stupid. It's because the ambitions and the aims and the abilities of those within the Scottish Government in the last couple of years have been too wee, too poorly thought out, and they have been too stupid. That does not have to stay that way. I fear that it will remain that way if Humza Yousaf wins, because I have grave concerns about the calibre of the people that he is likely to promote into ministerial or senior ministerial positions. That is not good. But if either of the women win, then I think that Scotland has a real opportunity to clear the decks and to have a leader with the foresight to say, what does Scotland need? When do we need it? How are we going to achieve it? We're at A, we want to get to B. How can we mobilise the strongest, bravest, most courageous, most capable, most forthright, most honest politicians and other civic leaders and other people of ability and skill and knowledge and experience to take this country towards the potential that we know it has, and to leave behind party politics which are partisan and which do not assist the people of this country in achieving our rightful destination. So I would hope very much that one of the women wins and has the drive and the courage and the ambition and the determination to, as I say, clear the decks and make Scotland a happier place, a safer place, a warmer place, a fulfilled country, and a peace-loving, peaceable nation. Not a nation who have been in the doldrums, in limbo, unnecessarily for far too long. We need a leader to lead us out of that, and we need that yesterday.
We do indeed now. I mean, Lloyd, I feel a wee bit like at the World Cup, and I'm sorry what I'm about to say, Yvonne, but when the World Cup starts, I'm one of those Abe supporters, anyone but England. And on this occasion, I'm an ABH, anyone but Humza. Because for the same reasons as Eva's mentioned there, and I'm sure the rest of us would come up with something similar. But I'm actually Ash, and I've got to say, because she's the only one to me that's come up with a credible independence plan. Kate has disappointed me, Lloyd. I don't know if it's come across to you, but she seems to have suddenly fallen into line.
I don't think Kate's heart's in it. I've watched her this past week. Now, as you know, I worked in television for a long time, both this side of the camera and the other side of the camera. And one of the skills you have to learn is to see how people maintain their on-screen energy, which is what gives them the ability to communicate properly. And I've seen that diminish over the past week in different circumstances. Sometimes she's up, sometimes she's down. I firmly get the feeling that she's being pushed to stay in. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but it's watching her. But on a more serious note, this week is absolutely crucial to the movement. It's crucial for the recovery of the Scottish National Party, but more importantly than anything, it's crucial to the credibility of the Scottish Parliament. If the First Minister of this country is elected with any doubt whatsoever, then our Parliament is diminished. And I have to say, it's been diminished quite a lot during this last term anyway. It doesn't need to go any further down in the eyes of the public. What has to happen, I believe, is if Michael Russell, who leaked to the press his decision about not accepting Ash's compromise, remember that, this is the president, this statesman, you know, this man, this figure of stature, leaked to the press without telling the candidates, right? If there is what they fear more than anything else is a legal challenge, because they know on a number of different grounds they haven't got a leg to stand on. They even broke their own constitution, you know? My feeling is this has to come maybe from a disgruntled member of the SNP like me. It shouldn't come from someone who will make a direct and personal gain from it, namely one of the candidates. I don't believe that's the right way to go. But understand this, and it's a really important point. I hope Eva will back me on this, but this could be a party litigant case with a protected costs order because it affects every man, woman, and child in this country. Everybody has a stake in this. And if we go to the Court of Session as a disgruntled member on the grounds of misuse of the party constitution and the internal democracy being, frankly, reduced to an abomination, but you go also with people who say, look, I don't have a dog in this fight, except they're going to be running my government. that stands, in my eyes, has a much better opportunity. It also says to people, come on, everyone come in on this. It allows the debate to open. If that happens, Mike Russell will have to resign. And the whole attempted fiddle of the succession collapses once again. And I think these are the things that we require to do for the future of not the SNP, which can be saved.
Yeah.
Has been the fact that you got Stevie Norris and Andy Brophy came out and have taken an active public part in the fight, shows that there is. And again, I don't know if it's a majority, but there's a very large and silent group of members, some of whom I've been speaking to over the past couple of weeks, who are ready to put their heads above the parapet again, but only when they see there's a purpose to it. And I believe we have to convince people that if Mike won't change his mind by, say, tomorrow at 5, then we start making the moves to seek an interim interdict to halt the process or to pause the process and then seek judicial review of the entire process from top to bottom.
Here. Now, one of the things that we've instituted, and as viewers write in and ask questions that they wanted answered on this election. Well, the first one we've answered, and that comes from Ian Elmsley, and he asked the question, you'll love this one, Lloyd. Did we think, his question is simple, is Mike Russell a fit and proper person to be the CEO and part of the problem? Well, I think you've answered that, as has Phil. The answer is no to that one. Robert Slavin from Coke Bridge, maybe someone you know. Phil, he was suggesting that I'll come back to his question if I may, because it's a wee bit different. I want to get to some of these questions here. Where are we? Craig McInnes sent in a question. He's asking now, is this showing now the SNP is now the main enemy or an obstacle, Yvonne, to Scottish independence? And
I would say an obstacle rather than an enemy. I think an enemy is probably a little bit too strong. But I would urge, as Lloyd has just said, I would urge the ordinary membership. You people are the party. Start to lead it. And I know that's difficult. I mean, I came from the Hawick branch and all of us were disenchanted with the whole prospect of the GRR bill, and we tried to raise it and we couldn't. And we had no voice. The entire branch was left voiceless in the party. And now there is no branch in Hawick. It's gone. So if anyone in SNP headquarters is listening, for God's sake, speak to the members and listen to what they're saying. I genuinely have yet to meet one ordinary member from the SNP who has spoken positively about GRR, who wants it, who is able to raise the issue in their branch or even discuss it. They have been barred from discussing it. It hasn't come up in conference. It wasn't in policy. And yet this has broken the back of the SNP. And I don't think they are the enemy, but they've got to start and use their voice. That's it.
Roddy, you're on mute, perhaps?
I think, Roddy, you're on mute.
Yeah, I forgot my mute button.
I have that
a question here from
you,
Kathy Sin Gupta, who wants to know, with the candidates, each candidate's in turn, are we likely to see any progress at the next two elections, the general, the UK general and the Scottish general election? Which of these candidates would be the best for us and which would be the worst?
Well, leading us into an election.
Sorry, what was that, Yvonne?
Leading us into an election.
Yeah. What do you think, Phil?
I think Ash Regan, the more confidence that she's getting, she looks the part, this flame head, woman who obviously will not take any nonsense. And I would love to see her really lead Scotland, because I think she could do it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Yvonne, and the Brave analogy is very accurate. If you remember the cartoon film Brave, I see Ash very much in that role. But the Humza and Kate Forbes denying the SNP split is just ridiculous. You know, and this is where I have my serious reservations about Kate, because STV's Craig Megan pointed out that this. I mean, it's nonsense to deny that the SNP is not split. I expect it from Humza, because for me, he's gone. He's must not be elected, and if he is, the fight will continue until he's deselected or replaced. So I'm even more inclined now towards Ash Regan. She's the only one who's facing up to the reality of the desperate situation we face. Hums is in denial. Kate in partial denial isn't going to cut it, because to fix a problem, the first thing is to recognise you have one. Everybody knows this. And Ash is the only candidate who's doing this. The recovery will be all the quicker with Ash, while Humza and Kate ignore key problems instead of tackling them head on and with the urgent repairs so desperately needed. And something that Lloyd mentioned earlier as well, is Kate's heart really in it? I mean, I'm seeing contradictory, some brave statements, and clearly a capable young woman. The other thing is the experience. I'm sick of having these Waynes telling me what I should think and what I should do. You know, I want somebody who's lived a little. So for that's why most politicians aren't Waynes folk. Wake up, sling. I mean, put them, get back down and educate. They're our children. I don't mean any animosity towards them, but they're certainly not going to lead me anywhere. So, you know, get back in line and do some homework, read your books, go to school, get a degree, go and get a job, live a little, and then get into politics. But don't try to tell me what you think. So no, it's got to be Ash.
If you look
Well,
for someone,
careful what
if
you
you look
wish
for someone
for.
that's lived a little, look at this face, mate. This has lived a lot. I mean,
Here, please, Roddy.
sorry?
I would like to amplify what Phil has just said, because I think we have to distinguish between a Holyrood election and a Westminster general election, and we have to be very careful about what the best strategy is for Scotland. And what Scotland needs, the SNP needs right now, is a leader who is fearless at taking on the Westminster establishment, and who will also promote the notion of Scottish independence within Holyrood and not be a devolutionist either in name or in nature. So what is required is somebody with the guts to say, you know what, we can still make the 19th of October 2023 decision day for Scotland. What we need is a concerted, unified campaign whereby we say the Scottish independence movement is a united movement. We've got all under one banner on the 6th of May. That should be an enormous event, showing the tremendous power of our movement when it is united. We follow that with, or we precede it rather, with a constitutional convention comprising elected and civic leaders. We have international action, and we have not just a truce, but a good, positive working arrangement between all the brains of the Scottish independence movement. And that means everybody who has ever proven their worth to Scotland, every single man and woman who has ever said that Scotland's interests are their interests and their priority. You know, the founding fathers of the SNP and every other independence supporting party in the country, in history, every independentista has said Scotland's independence is the priority, not for the sake of it, not for the here and now, but for ensuring that every citizen of Scotland born here, arrived here, gets to realise their potential. So we should be promoting Scotland, independence, Scotland's interests at every turn. That's what has to happen. People need a date to work towards. When that date is there, when there is unity, when there is drive, when the hatches have been buried somewhere that's not between each other's shoulder blades, then that's when Scotland's going to be able to take its place in the world. And that could happen this year if there is determination, drive, and courage. That's what Scotland needs right this very week.
Indeed it is. You were talking earlier, Lloyd, about, you know, you can, from your experience on both sides of the camera, I've noticed, and I think, and a lot of anecdotal evidence is saying the same social media. Ash has grown as this campaign has gone on.
Yeah.
And if it had been a longer campaign, a proper campaign, the way it normally is, I think that she would have come into her own.
I think that's what they fear. I mean, the three most important things in television when you're not being an actor and performing another character, the three most important things: authenticity, intelligence, passion. She has those in spades. And I mean, for me, it's been fantastic watching her develop. Because, I mean, I obviously, because I know her offer to help earlier on, but there's been no time and no space. They had them running about in this hamster wheel of hustings and meetings across the country. There was no time for any media training. The other two had already had theirs, of course. But, let's look at it this way. Why is Ash standing? 4 years a minister. 4 years as part of the governing group of the governing party. She's seen what's around her. And I get the impression that she's not impressed with an awful lot of people. And it's a lot to do with this cult of youth. And I think she, like many of us, thinks to yourself, we live in a country with an aging population. How can we have a cult of youth? How can we have this absolute and utter and complete obsession with everybody under the age of 25 when we're in a country where we should be educating them about understanding how they're going to have to take on a burden because of
the aging population?
Now, how do you judge the civilization of a country? How it looks after its children and how it looks after its old people? And currently, we're failing at both ends of the spectrum. 25% of our children were living in poverty in 1999. They still are now. Is that the benefits that we get from devolution? In 1999, 22% of our pensioners were living in poverty. That's now 31%. What do we get for managing the British state? And let's face facts. What's the Scottish Parliament at the moment managing the British state? The one thing Ash Regan knows is it is managing the British state. And she doesn't believe that it's fair to us today or to future generations that we manage our own country on behalf of someone else. Now, I haven't heard that simple thinking from senior members of the Scottish National Party for a very, very long time. All I hear is embarrassment at even using the I word. I'm sick to the back teeth of hearing senior members of the SNP describe the achievement of independence of my country as indie. In that diminutive, they tell me exactly what they think independence means.
Yvonne, do you have any faith whatsoever that we can rescue this? We can rescue this from the jaws of defeat?
Well, yes, I do. And Lloyd's just touched on it. The one ism that this progressive Nicolia Sturgeon government hasn't done is it's treated age and wisdom with contempt. And you just look around Holyrood now and it looks like a Botox club. There's no wrinkles, there's no lines of wisdom. I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, with the exception of Christine Graham, who I've still not seen yet, since she gave that interview in support of the female candidates. And it's about time we had some more grey hair and wrinkles in Holyrood. Because at the moment, as I say, ageism, it's the one ism that they've overlooked. They've bent over backwards for every minority group you can think of to make sure that all the boxes are ticked for representation in Holyrood. But who's representing the pensioners? Who's representing the people of even in Middle Ages, people who understand what us older ones are going through and how people are struggling? And That is something that, but if they wanted to be really progressive, why don't Kate and Ash do a job share? For, it's quite obvious Kate is struggling a bit. And that may be because she's just had a baby and she's been involved in this hamster wheel of hustings. And she's...
Well, I've got a better idea for you, Yvonne. Going back to when Alec came back up, he was up against Nicola Sturgeon, and he told her she wasn't ready and she would get in behind him and he would see her through. Turned out to be, we know, not the greatest thing that ever happened. But that could happen with Ash. Ash has got that experience, and maybe Kate's not quite ready for the top job yet. And I think she'd be a good number 2, and she could be staying in finance with Ash leading the party. I think would be a good number. Then
I think they would make a good team.
Joanna for justice,
Can
Philip for health, and off you go.
Can I just say that I've heard this and I've seen this suggested by a lot of people. My own feeling is that in the current circumstance, that's a recipe for disaster, because I'm not certain that Kate has a great enough appreciation of the depth of the problem in the democratic structures of the party, whereas Ash, having suffered from those democratic or undemocratic practices in the party practically from the day she joined, has a very clear idea of what's wrong, and has I think, probably a very clear plan of how to sort it out. And the quicker that's done, the quicker we get back on the road. But the other thing I was going to say, following up from Yvonne, is it's really simple. No political party and no parliament anywhere on the planet will succeed if it does not reflect the nature of the population of its country. It's simple. It's really straightforward. But we've allowed a lot of stupid ideas to come into the SNP over the long period of time of being in government. And that has to change. And I cannot see that with Kate Forbes. I can see it with Ash because she has that, 2 19-year-old boys that she's had to deal with while running a career as well. She knows when to say no.
I would like to know what's gone on in the background, though, Lloyd, because when Kate came out, she came out fighting and she had a lot of passion. And I don't know if behind the scenes somebody sat on her or threatened her or told her this isn't the way to do things. But she seemed to lose some of that fire midway in the hustings, whereas
Ash has grown.
Ash seemed to get more spiky by the hour.
I mean, I do lots of selection processes, and there's a similar dynamic happens. You have a candidate who appears to be the candidate that the constituency wants, and they go into the first couple of hustings, and it's all working nicely for them. Then they get one question, and it slightly trips them up. They start self-doubt, and then they try to keep that self-doubt under control, and it expresses itself. Now, to me, that's what it looks like. But I'm sorry, you can't do that in public if you're the leader of a party. See what Ash is, and it's happened. We've seen it, we witnessed it. Tentative, nervous in the beginning, and then a growth in stature. The more often you tell her try and talk over her, the more often you try and mansplain her about something, the stronger she gets. Now, to me, that's an investment. That's an investment in a leader who is growing into leadership. Alec had never led the party when he led the party, and I remember him being an exceedingly good speaker and a man of presence, but he was finding his way as well. This idea of you don't have experience. Don't show me. What experience did David Cameron have? What experience did Winston Churchill have? Well, he was a fucking journalist. Oops. But this whole politics is about your faith in ideas, your core belief, and being able to apply that. And if you truly believe in something, then you will grow into being able to apply those beliefs. And I've seen it over the past few weeks, and I think if we can get to the position where Ash is the outright leader, she will create the cabinet of the talents, and she'll create structures that will bring in the very people Eva was talking about as well, where we get the best in the country together, whether they're elected or not, to lead us forward.
But if we don't get this election, I think, sorted, we ain't going to get anything.
Yes.
I know Phil was bursting at the seams to come in with a couple of things, but the clock is beating us as usual. But the first question, because we want to talk about it, Phil's raised a point about it would take too long to discuss today, which is we need a clear out, a big clear out, and names need to be named, and they will be. This will make you all come back, folks, for next week, for the weekend show, because we're going to name names. So, and when this is over, I'm going to get a wee critique off of Lloyd how I'm doing. See if I should keep going and bringing the replacement. So, till we see you all again at the weekend, all of you out there, remember two things. One, if you're in the SNP, make noise, get in touch with HQ, complain, moan, groan. Watch out for this crowdfunding. If this legal challenge goes ahead, get behind it. Our country needs it. Our country needs it. So, till we see you at the weekend, take care.
Now's the day, and now
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.